Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! ISB!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thanks for joining us here on this Thursday, March 7th. Of course, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, powered by Andy Moore Honda. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com and our good friends over at Hoosier Hanks East, where you'll find us generally after your basketball games. Not there last night because it was a late one, but Todd Leary will join us today, courtesy of Hoosier Hanks East, and we'll talk about Indiana's win last night over Minnesota as they continue their winning ways. They are fortunate to have a nice part of the end of the schedule to have, but Indiana is getting the job done. What is that? Their third straight now, John. Indiana has won here as the tail end of the season comes into play.
Yeah.
Big night.
And on the, I don't know if you saw, but the big fuss yesterday was the petition. Did you see all the stuff going on yesterday about the petition that people were signing to get Woodson out of Bloomington?
I saw it, but my only response to that was that this was ridiculous.
Yep.
It's stupid. It's not going to happen. So the fact that you think that the petition was ignorant, I'm
Yes.
sorry. It was just purely ignorant. But fans get to be fans. And that's fine. You can express yourself however you want, but that's why you should listen to us. John, what have I said consistently along the way as far as what will be happening with Mike Woodson?
I mean, you have been absolutely consistent in that nothing is going to happen at the end of this year.
And guess what?
Things, do what?
And guess what? What came out?
And they came out yesterday. And honestly, in my opinion, I don't know why they needed to do this. I guess it's because of all of the uproar. But we got confirmation yesterday that Woodson will be the head coach for going into next year, 2024-25 season.
Unattributed had confirmation, but yes, obviously it had reached the status to where they're like, all right, we've got to quash this. But as far as you may be alluding to more things that I didn't see, I other than just being aware of it, knowing it was out there, and like, dude, y'all need to stop. This is dumb. It is. You've also never heard me say that this kind of stuff is bad for recruiting because I never really believed it. But when you get to the level of starting a petition to get rid of the coach and all that stuff, when it ain't gonna happen, now you're starting to. Now I did believe that that kind of stuff would impede recruiting, and they don't need any help impeding recruiting. Trust me on that. But I'm sure there's some things that I have missed that you might be talking about.
Nothing specific other than, kind of what we've already laid out, but there's just understandable frustration. Like it makes sense. But one thing that doesn't make sense is the fact that all of this has come on the heels of the best stretch of basketball that this team has played all season long. I'm not sure why the noise has amplified now when things seem to be, again, it's too little too late. This team still isn't going to make the NCAA tournament unless they win the Big Ten tournament. But it does kind of blow my mind how it seems like up until at least today, prior to today, the noise kept getting louder and louder and louder.
Well, I think prior to that, because the losing had continued.
Yeah.
Right.
And now you've won
because
2 straight road games, 3 straight games in general.
Yes. I think it was just the culmination just before that of everything. But it just nothing. It was not going to happen. There were and I've given the reasons over and over of why it was not going to happen. And it doesn't matter. Fans, sometimes, I'm not talking about any of you guys, you're all smart, but there's just too many people that think they know something that they just don't know. I'm telling you, there is so much that I don't know, but I know what I do know. That's the difference. I know what I know. I also know there's a lot that but I don't know what I don't know. That's the question. I don't think fans put themselves in that position. They have no clue what they don't know, what they do not understand. And it's, there's a difference between having an opinion and then doing stuff like that. That's not a good look. My opinion. And again, like I said, you've never heard me say that kind of stuff affects things. They're getting that. Indiana fans just they can express themselves, but I think some of the younger, less knowledgeable, more mouthy fans are spouting off. Social media is just giving them such a tool.
I'll say this, and maybe this
no
is just
intention
what
on no pun intended there, John.
I feel like I agree with the less knowledgeable part, but I feel like it's coming from a lot of the older people. And that, again, it may be a combination of both.
Older people are not on Twitter. I can tell you
that's not necessarily true. A lot of the older people on Twitter are people that don't have profile pictures. They used to be the little egg avatars. I don't think they do that anymore. But it's the people and they have usernames that aren't even real @names. It's just kind of, they're people who come on.
That's another thing that drives me insane. I had somebody. I try to respond to the comments that come via YouTube and whatnot. And there was somebody that said something last night, and it's an anonymous, and I'm like going, you know what? I almost don't even want to respond to anonymous named site, accounts or whatever. If you're gonna throw that stuff out there, put your name behind it. Don't sit there and hide. That is just gutless. Gutless. Is anything I say hidden? Can I hide? What can I hide behind? Nothing. So that gutless anonymous posting stuff, that's BS. Get out of here with that. If you're going to run your mouth, put your name next to it. That's all I'm saying. Have a set. Male or female. Doesn't matter. But yeah, that gets a little aggravating. But so you don't even have to worry about it. But Indiana gets a win last night over Minnesota easily, 70-58. Kalel Webb, we'll talk about that. Todd Denari on the program today. I haven't even said that yet. We haven't even gotten to that. Shannon Griffith joins us, of course. We'll talk about IU's Pro Day. Todd Leary will join us. We'll talk about the game last night. Chris Denari will join us as well. Zach Osterman, normally on Fridays. He'll join us today instead. We'll also talk about the Woodson situation and last night's game and this weekend's upcoming closeout to the regular season against Michigan State, where Indiana can go for their 19th win. No, I'm sorry, 18th win. Currently 17-13. And the irony, it just keeps coming. I think it's great. As you look at the standings in the where are we? Where's the Big Ten? There we go. The Big Ten standings now. Indiana moves up a little bit continuing to get themselves out of that bottom four, which they're comfortably out of at the moment. 9 and 10. The odds of them landing in there, even if they lose their last game, I don't think happens. But I think that they might win that last game, as I've said this week. Get them up to 10 and 10. Now, that would get them up to, and if they win that last game, they're probably going to wind up the sixth seed in the.
They will be a six because they'll own the tiebreaker over Michigan State and they'll
Iowa.
own the tiebreaker over Iowa.
And now they need a little help from Rutgers. Is it Rutgers?
Wisconsin has 2 more games left. If they have to lose both of them,
yes, and they're going to lose one. They have to play Purdue, so I mean I'm counting that as a loss. But
that'd be
they are
weird
at
because
home.
Wisconsin will have an identical conference record and overall record, and they both won 1 game apiece, Indiana and Wisconsin, against each other. So I don't even know how that tiebreaker would work.
It probably the next level probably goes back to wins over certain teams.
Maybe something like that.
But that's a good point and a good question. No, that's what I'm saying. They could end up in that slot if Rutgers beats Wisconsin.
But what I'm saying is, if Wisconsin loses both games, they'd be 10 and 10 in conference. If Indiana beats Michigan State, they'll be 10 and 10 in conference. They'll also have identical overall records, 18 and 13, and they also would both own 1 win apiece over each other. So you're literally tied in every way possible.
I forget what it is, but there's something that's in my mind that's telling me that they would end up with that 5th seed.
Yeah, well, we may have to figure out what that is, so who knows? But that requires Rutgers to beat Ohio State, which will be difficult nonetheless.
No, it requires
more difficult than relying on them to lose to Purdue.
Yeah, but either way, they're probably going to end up the 6th seed at worst case if they can handle business with Michigan State. Very surprising considering less than a week ago we're talking about them being in the bottom 4. So a nice little
shows
surge.
How wide open the conference is outside of the top 2 teams, really.
A nice little surge for Indiana at the end of the season. We'll get into all that. Big nights for Kel'el Ware and I can't think. Trey Galloway continues his assist party as he gets a double-double, as does Kel'el Ware, but Trey Galloway does it with assists. He's just been piling up the assists lately. He is chasing the single-season record of Quinn Buckner's. Now, I'm sure there have been less games that Buckner played, but I don't want to get into all that. But the fact that Quinn Buckner was the dead-on point guard the whole time, the whole season, that's not what Trey Galloway's job has been. His job has been various things. So we've got to take a break. We have got a loaded schedule today, like I said. Up next, Shannon Griffith's going to join us. We'll talk about Indiana's Pro Day a couple of days ago and get you caught up on that, and then college basketball and a myriad of other things. Stay tuned. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at Andy Moore Honda. Don't forget, stop by and check it out. Also, Free Think, our friends over at Free Think, that for those of you that are in the market for whatever your needs might be in the merchandising industry, Free Think Apparel and Promos, your go-to spot for professionally printed sportswear, team apparel, fan gear, signage, promotional products, and more. Whether you need 24 t-shirts for your upcoming family reunion or 200 for this season's recreational softball league, Free Think Apparel meets your needs. Their team of industry experts will work with you to design a professional-looking, sales-generating web store for your customer-designed apparel, your own store that they'll design and manage for you, by the way. You don't even have to mess with. From large corporations and high school sports teams to national accounts, and pro-led athletic camps. Freethink Apparel delivers. Visit freethinkapparel.com today and get printing. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Good morning, Shannon.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Is that one of them alarms, classic alarm noises from the phone? At least that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, that's right. Some days I needed to be just hit over the head
Yeah.
to wake up.
Some days are stones. Some days
Jimmy's a little
won't leave me alone. Well, somebody pulled the string, and now I'm just going.
Hey, real quick, am I telling Tyler we don't need him today? We never confirmed that.
We could probably slide him into Zach's spot tomorrow, right?
That's actually not a bad idea. I'll send him that message.
There you go, and he can prep Michigan State that way.
There we go. Good call there.
Yeah, thanks, boys. Whoa, yo, what up, SG?
Good morning.
How are you, sir? I went to Pro Day the other day.
Yeah, I saw some of your clips. Then I saw clips on work throwing around a little bit. Big kid. He is a big body kid.
Who?
Rourke, quarterback.
I'm glad. Okay, bring that up because I've got a funny. When somebody pointed him out, and said that there's Rourke, and I went, we're on the sideline, so I'm looking out there amongst all these people, and I'm like, which one? And they said, this guy here. I go, you mean that big tight end looking son of a bitch?
Yeah. He's a big boy.
And that's exactly what I said. I go, you mean that big tight end looking son of a bitch? Because, and it was appropriate because Wabash's quarterback was there throwing. They had some guys there. That Wabash quarterback, that dude's got some zip on his arm. He just didn't get enough help from God in growing. He's too small, but he's got a freaking little laser.
Yeah. What's that kid's name? I can't remember. I think he's an indie kid, isn't he? Or no?
I don't know.
All right, here we go, guys. 10 seconds.
Perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday. Thank you so much for being with us. Plenty to talk about. Shannon Griffith joins us now from Hoosier Tailgate. We'll talking about this week. Indiana football had Pro Day. I was out there, Shannon, and in the break we were jokingly talking about something, and you mentioned Indiana's expected starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Curtis
Rourke. Yeah.
And I was on the sideline and someone said, oh, there's Rourke. And because generally you obviously you have to have quarterbacks to throw to the receivers.
Right.
And there was actually receivers there from outside of IU, some guys from Wabash. Wabash's quarterback was there who God just didn't treat him quite kindly enough to give him enough height because he's got a little laser on his shoulder, little rocket thrower. Looked good. But the funny, anyway, getting back to so there's Rourke, and I'm like, okay, where? Because we're on the sideline looking out there into this group of players, and they finally describe him enough, and I'm like, you mean that big tight end looking SOB? He's kind of a big boy. Got some size. I guess you'd have to go back to Nate Sudfeld for Indiana, for a guy that has the build at quarterback for Indiana. But yeah, he's size, experience, not a bad combination.
Yeah, he's probably a little thicker too than what Nate was back in the day.
Yeah.
But he's every bit of that 6'5", 6'6" stature, about 230 pounds. The video that I saw, him throwing it around a little bit, you can see his ability to throw the high touch ball, and in times where he, threw the true line shots that, showed his strength of his arm. And there's a reason why he was a MAC player a couple of years ago, and you saw it. Now he's, I think he's battled a little bit of the weight issue because he was coming off of maybe had some type of surgery or something that he was nursing when he came in. And you can see that he's gotten himself back into a little bit more better playing weight. But you can see why he also fit that mold that Coach Cignetti talked about, what made him take a guy like Curtis Rourke, and that's because he had a body of work and he's played the position. And those are the things that gives him the edge to a degree going into camp. But you're going to see Tyler Cherry to get a good look this spring to see where he's at in his development, what he brings to the table. I think you're going to get Taven to get his opportunity to, show what he can do. But definitely a talented room heading into the spring.
Oh, without question. And most importantly, options. Indiana has options. And I'm not talking about just its starter, although you do, because you mentioned a room of guys that, while we're expecting Rourke to be the guy, just because of all the thing, the experience and all that go into it, he didn't come here to sit, which I know people say that about other guys, but this is a different situation. But not only do you have options, but you have options, and you have guys that options to groom. And that is the year 2 thing. Indiana is in a position already that they are generally, or haven't been in quite some time. And that is working on the following season of quarterback already during the current season. That has not been the case for such a long time. And that's how you get ahead of the game. And as hard as the game is to get ahead of now, in this day and age of college athletics, again, I've got to give credit to Kurt Cignetti and the staff for being in that position right now.
Yeah, and they've, you got Alberto Mendoza, who'll be coming to campus, in the fall. Don't forget about what Brock Lowry may or may not show this spring and determine what his future may look like. It's one of those things that you've got to have the depth at that position out of any position there is on your roster, just because it's a position in today's game can be riddled with injury, and you're a guy that could be a play away or 2 plays away from being the starting quarterback. So having the depth on having, those guys in place to compete, they should come out of spring with a pretty good idea what they have and who that guy is going to be moving forward. And they're going to have to do some things probably. The thing that concerns me, I don't know if it concerns me as much as it's a double-edged sword, is this double transfer rule is still in effect. And you can come out of spring and you're going to have some guys that are going to leave. And when you look at that, you look at it from the positions of skill. And that can mean wide receiver room. That could be the quarterback room. All of a sudden you're feeling good. And then they find out they're not going to be the guy. And next thing you know, two of them hop in the portal and they're gone. Now, but I do think you're correct. Indiana has the opportunity to not only work on the here and now, but into the future. Something that they haven't done or haven't been able to really do in years past.
Yeah, and that does a lot more, not just for player development,
right?
But for team development. You're kind of it just exponentially grows itself out as not only you're growing the positions from the most position down, of course, at quarterback, but the team chemistry, team development. Again, none of this stuff have we seen in the last several years. It's like starting over.
Yeah.
I don't want to say starting over every year, but it's been kind of close to that. And every time that they started over, it was like a step forward and two steps back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is like taking 4 steps forward, 1 step back, which is fine because that means you're still 3 steps ahead from where you were.
Well, you look at the difference between what Indiana has had in the quarterback room and what you just spoke about to what a team like Ohio State has in the quarterback room, where they've got, oodles of talent that's buried on the depth chart. Those guys never leave. Very seldom do you see a guy from Ohio State leave unless, it's just so stacked against him, there's no way to see his way on the field. But that's why they have a great year in, year out, because of the ability to what you said, Jim, was to develop that continuity in the program, to develop that team development with the younger guys down the roster. They stick in the program, they bide their time, and when it comes to their opportunity, they're ready to go, as are the guys that have been around them for 2 to 3 years. So Indiana, in that respect, never's been able to really get to that point. And that's the depth issue that they've always kind of been a hindrance to them. And now I do think there's an opportunity to start growing that aspect of the program with Coach Signetti and some of the rule changes that have also aided to a certain degree in that regard, development part. But yes, they're in a better position than they have been in the past. They've got a talented room that is going to be fun to watch as it comes out of the spring ball, as are other positions on the team that have that competitive balance in the room.
Absolutely. And that is nothing but good news for Indiana. It continues to go along with, like I said, how the schedule is set up. Going into spring, and this is going to be interesting to watch this kind of, now you got to bring it all together. Mm-hmm. And you've been in this position before as a coach, so you've got to go from spring to fall, and you've got a lot to do in a short period of time, because in essence, it's a brand new team, which there are tons of the same pieces. Don't get me wrong, but offense, totally different. Defense, totally different. Staff, totally different.
Yeah.
A third of the players, totally different. So this is a whole new deal. And so you have got to implement all of that, implement the players together, implement the staff and the players together. There's a lot to get done for this program.
Yeah, and that's why this spring is so critical on many fronts, some seen, some unseen, when it comes to establishing what the bar is. That's going to be the big focal point for Coach Signetti. As you know, you've heard him talk about what he expects. He wants fast, physical, and relentless, and that mindset is going to be, imprinted on every position that there is. So it's how do we practice? How do we do things? All those things, as well as evaluation of talent and players, is going to take place this spring. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, as an assistant coach or a position coach, these guys are going to grade every practice. They're going to grade every drill. They're going to create a dossier on about every player in their position group. So at the end of the at the end of spring, they're able to have true, hard, honest questions with not only the players that are in that room, but the head coach when he asks a question about so-and-so, and he needs to know what the ins and outs are about a particular player. So very critical spring for Indiana. Not trying to be cliche-ish there, because I don't think you ever hear a coach talk about the non-importance of spring football. But in this situation, highly, highly, highly important for a lot of things to be put together, implemented, and then, of course, set for next fall as they come back in August to get things rolling for the season.
And as Brian points out, Indiana with 5 quarterbacks on the roster right now. You gotta set the hierarchy next. And again, assuming Rourke is the top, is QB1. Well, those next 4 slots, where they fall in, that's what's going to be interesting to see for me. I do not think that Taven Jackson is going to be the number 2 guy.
Yeah, I mean not. I mean, Tyler Cherry, or somebody that Alberto Mendoza coming in as the true freshman comes in and wows them during the fall camp. That's what the competition's for in the spring. Will they? I doubt if Coach Cignetti makes a true indication on who is the guy at the conclusion of spring. Outwardly. Now, inwardly, I think that will be communicated in saying this is our guy. But you may be right. Taven Jackson may not be number 2. Who knows?
Or I may be crazy.
Yeah, but the other thing,
a lunatic I'm looking for.
You're on point today. The biggest thing with Taven is, there's a kid that has a lot of talent. I'm anxious to see what Tino can do with him and developing him, because there's a lot of tangibles that Taven does have. And if they can corral it, and part of it's between his ears, then you may see him blossom into somebody that we never thought would be that way.
Absolutely. Shannon, as always, my friend, I cannot thank you enough. Look forward to doing this again next week as we get closer and closer to the spring game for Indiana.
It's here,
right around the corner, man. It's crazy. Well, I just mentioned Big Ten football media days are 4 months away, man. I
know. It's crazy. I mean, that's how fast the calendar flies. I think you get older, it goes faster. I think that's what happens to us. We get older and things fly by us, but it's here. I mean, you think about it. Spring football's in a couple weeks, and you feel like Cignetti just got hired. I mean,
I don't know anything about that getting older part.
Well, you will.
Senator Griffith, I appreciate you, my friend.
Yeah, you too, buddy.
Have a good one. Hey, we've got tons more coming up, including the Todd father joins us next. Todd Leary. We'll talk about Indiana's 3rd straight win as they knock off Minnesota last night up in that cold, cold barn. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a
real quick, Tyler Smith is good to go tomorrow, so you can, no issue with the segment after this. Just make sure you hit the hard break.
Hit the hard break. Well, just don't forget to throw that up if you have to.
All right.
Good day, sir.
Yes, sir.
What up?
It's like you've been able to. It's like you have been able to work with them osmosisly.
You mean Justin Baco, right?
Well, yeah,
because he's the only one that's made any shots. But yes, I mean, no, I'm not going to be negative about it. Yeah, I mean,
maybe that's the point. Maybe he's taking more and they're taking less.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we didn't beat that team yesterday, I mean, it's so crazy to watch that game and then turn it over and watch UConn and I forget who they were playing, but then watch Kentucky
Marquette.
and UConn and Marquette and South Carolina and Tennessee, and you're like, oh gosh, it's like I flipped over and watched the JV. Like our game was miserable to watch. I'm so glad we won. Like we did a lot of good things or whatever. I'm not going to be negative, but man, that game was miserable.
They usually are.
When you can win the miserable ones, though.
Hey, that's good. On the road, you want them to be miserable. You just want to do exactly what happened. Figure out a way to win. But yeah, no, it was those that guy from Minnesota, that Hawkins guy, gets so much credit for being really, really good, and he could not have been any worse last night. He was the worst player I've ever seen.
Who?
Elijah Hawkins.
Oh.
For them last night, he's the worst player literally I've ever seen, maybe in a Division I basketball game.
If all of the cards go in Indiana's favor, they'll be a 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament.
No way. Is that hilarious?
Yes.
If they win tomorrow or win on Sunday and Wisconsin loses their next 2, there's a scenario where they could be the 5 seed.
Well, I think at worst, if they win, they're the 6
If they
seed.
win, they're automatically the 6. Yes.
Oh, that's
they'll have
gigantic.
breakers over Michigan State and Iowa because they'll have identical records.
That's gigantic. Just not being 8, actually not being 7 or 8 is a huge difference. Not playing Illinois or Kentucky.
7-8 play Purdue.
Yeah. The winner of 8-9 plays Purdue, and the winner of 7-10 plays Illinois. So you don't want to be either one of those
difference.
It actually gives them a shot. Playing the way they're playing now, they can beat
you just don't want to.
10 seconds, guys. Here we go.
2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to anymorehonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back on this Thursday. Thank you so much for being with us, as always. Brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East, over off of College Mall Road in Bloomington, where normally you could find us after the game with Todd Leary. Too late of a game last night for that. I'll be honest with you. I think I fell asleep before the final horn. Todd had texted me. We were texting a little bit about some things, and then I saw another one, and I'm like, I woke up at 3 a.m. and I'm like, oops, missed that one. But Indiana gets a big win last night, Todd, on the road, 70-58 up in that cold barn. But they did it with a brand of team basketball. You sent me the text early on and it did not change. I've never seen this. I'll be honest with you. Indiana shoots, or they hit 30 field goals? They had a grand total of 28 assists. I've never heard of that. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I haven't gotten the book out yet to see what Indiana's assist record is, but that's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt that's going to be anywhere near. It's kind of a weird stat because, yes, it's kind of good, kind of great. But on the flip side, it all depends on how many field goals that is. Like I looked at it at halftime, and my only point was they assisted on every single field goal. The amount of field goals wasn't enough. So they only had 14 field goals, but it was 14 assists on 14 field goals. I mean, that's just kind of – it can say a couple of things, and one of them is not really a positive thing. It can say, like, your team is sharing the ball really well, which I think is more a reflection of the way that they actually played. Or it can say we don't have very many guys that can get their own shot and create their own basket. And, that's sometimes true also with this team. So, it's not like it's a crazy great stat. It's an interesting stat. It's good for this team in particular, I think, in that I would argue with a lot of people that yesterday was the best sharing of the basketball, the best team concept basketball. They finally played at a pace. Had they played at a pace like that in the pre-conference games, we would not have had the net ranking that we have right now, because we would have blown some teams out. We would have turned the ball over more. Yes, our turnover ratio wouldn't be great, but we would have scored a lot more points. And I hope that we learn from that lesson this year going into next year. In those early games, we try to score 140 points every game.
Yeah, there's no question. The team seems to be gelling, I guess you'd say, with one game left to play. A little too late. But there's other few things. Mackenzie Mbako, his game has also developed too little too late, but it is if he's back next year, that is an incredibly good sign that you're happy to see right now.
Yeah, and he's not only shooting the ball much better, more consistently, he's also getting to the rim. Like, the difference between Mackenzie and Mbako, the reason why he's still on a lot of draft boards, when you look at his stats and things that might not, wow you or think, how are they putting this guy on the draft, is the way he finishes around the rim. Like, the difference between Cam Christie yesterday. Cam Christie is a great outside shooter as a freshman, also same class. Both guys are considered, probably the best shooters in the Big Ten as freshmen. Although I think the Dix kid from Iowa might argue with him a little bit. But the way that Mbako finishes really high at the rim, like when he lays it in, when he makes those spin moves that got in the lane yesterday at least 2, maybe 3 times, he's finishing the ball like right at the rim. And that's NBA level stuff that someone only his size and athletic ability can do at that level, versus a guy like Cam Christie is not quite to that level in finishing yet. Probably maybe a better shooter, real close to similar shooters. But that's what gives Mbako that little extra oomph when it gets to the NBA. Now, I think people are all going to say, all of the analysts and people with the NBA draft are going to say he'd be better off to stick around another year. That doesn't necessarily mean he sticks around another year. We hear that a lot. They say that about most people all the time.
Hey, when they wave a check under your nose, there's no way you're going to ignore that.
So here's a couple things I was thinking about that are different nowadays that maybe we should be happy to accept. People who don't love the Big Ten tournament, like, in my day when we played, our next game would be the last game of the year. Selection Sunday would be, that day, and you'd move on from there. There is no tournament. And in Indiana's scenario, the season would be over Sunday. Like, that would be it. Like, there would be no opportunity for postseason play. Maybe the NIT, but I'm not even counting that as postseason play. So what you got?
I'm just going to say I'm responding to Jason's comment that there was a petition that went online by a group of uninformed fans, that I'll say that, and he says the petition was a dumb thing to do, which I more than agree with. However, the play on the court with the talent they have was unacceptable. I agree with that. He says Indiana is now playing like a team that cares. Why did it take so long? I think that's a legitimate question. I don't have a problem with that. I think that is, because that was my next question, is absolutely, it was stupid, because there's no bear. It doesn't mean jack. What an ignorant online social media poll does, set up by, if this was coming from the Indy Star or something, it would be a whole different scenario. But something that may have started on Facebook or some other ridiculous way to do it, it's just stupid. And I've never said that kind of stuff hurts recruiting until that. And I'm like, that one's kind of ignorant. You're going to a new level, guys. Just chill the hell out. It'll take care of itself. And I do think that was a dumb thing by whoever started it and whoever participated in it.
Yeah, hey, I'm not here to tell people what to do and how to act and how. I mean, social media has created a situation. I could go on Twitter right now and do a poll and ask, hey, who thinks Mackenzie Mbako shouldn't start anymore? And I'll get some people who will say, yeah, he definitely shouldn't start anymore. Like that's fine. Like that's what it's created for. Everyone's allowed to share their opinion. The thing about a petition to actually get someone fired, like in that case, like let's just use this as an example. Unless you're going to hand that petition in, basically like turning your homework in to Scott Dolson along with a check for $75 million,
bingo.
Then that thing is pointless. Like you're doing that. I don't know what you're trying to prove. I mean, no result is going to happen out of doing that. So why? Like what's your purpose in that? And maybe someone has an answer to that. Like they had a purpose for what? Attention. Yeah, and it clicks or whatever it is, and that's fine. Hey, that's why a lot of people make a lot of money with all those clicks and that stuff, and that's great. That's fine.
I wish I did.
I don't judge that, but looking at when you just step back, which is hard for us, including myself as Indiana fans to do, but when you step back and look at it's year 3, the uninformed comments where people say it's obvious Renew and Mbako can't stand playing for Coach Woodson. Well, somebody can't say that because that's not obvious to me. Like I don't see that. I think Renew enjoys being coached. I think Woodson recognizes he enjoys is the wrong term, but he responds to being coached harder than maybe some other people. And
Renew, for example, I think that Renew and Ware are completely two different.
Totally.
Yes, those two guys right there. Bam.
So, I'll be Bill Walton here. I'll refer back to my day, and I'll say this: Coach Knight, without any questions whatsoever, coached Alan Henderson differently than he coached Calvert Chaney. And the reason is because he knew if he got on Calvert really, really hard, Calvert was going to respond. Alan responded better to different kinds of coaching, not necessarily the hard-nosed coaching. And that's no diss on Alan Henderson at all. Like I hope it doesn't come across that way. They're just different people. They respond differently to different love languages or whatever it is. So, it just because he treats Renew different than he treats Ware doesn't mean he thinks one's better than another. That's what he's trying to get the most out of these guys. And that is where, you look at this and I see those comments and I shouldn't let it work me up because it's one person making a comment that, 100 people liked, but you look at it and you're like, that's just someone trying to get some credit for something. And I don't even know what it is because they're all trying. They all want to win. Like the comment you had up there a minute ago about why is it just looking like they care now? No, they've cared all along. If you heard the post-game press conference with Khalil Ware, he even referred to our team as just now starting to gel. And yes, however unfortunate that is, it does seem true. I mean, they do seem like they're playing better together and enjoying playing better together. And it is unfortunate it's early March that it took for that to happen. But, I mean, let's not just act like this season is a total waste already. Like, hey, I say it with you every time now. Somebody makes a run every year. Why not? So we were the best, 16-13 after the last game. We are still the most talented 17-13 team in the country right now. Like, we have the talent to win. It's just now they're starting to put it together and figure it out.
Absolutely. And the players. Mackenzie Mbako, there was so much pressure on him at the start of this season to be this phenom. And it just doesn't work that way. I mean, maybe some guys are able to come in and adjust differently, but with his position, with the guys around him, he can't control who's at the point. He can't control Indiana's guard situation that has been really in flux. He can't control Khalil Ware kind of getting into the groove with Malik Renew. There was just a lot of moving parts. I'm not excusing Indiana for not being better sooner. They should have been. There's a whole other litany of reasons for that. But Mackenzie Abaco has come along, and man, there's no way that anyone can say he has not been really consistent here of late and just grown.
For sure, yeah, and definitely grown, and definitely he's made plays he would not have made a month ago, even, or 2 months ago, for sure. And so, he's progressed through the situation. I think what everybody wanted, like remember, you probably won't remember this because you weren't living it like I lived it at this point. But our freshman year, even though Calbert Chaney came in and was an immediate star, they could rely on him from day one, and he almost always produced. My freshman year, we were 18-10. Like, we were not we barely made the tournament. I think we were an 8 or a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. Now, every other year after that, I think worse, we were a 3 or 4 seed. But I mean, early on in Calbert Chaney's career, it isn't like he came in and just immediately took this team to being a 1 seed. And so from that perspective, look, Mbako has progressed, I think, right along the lines of what we would have. Maybe a little quicker would have been great, but I think he's progressed right there where you would want him to. A thing I found interesting, Jim, was I watched, prior to the game last night, I watched Northwestern and Michigan State play. And I bet if Coach Woodson, and I'm not here to make excuses for Coach Woodson or stand up for him. He doesn't need me to stand up for him or anything else. And I'm not even doing that. I'm laughing at how they just kind of overlook certain things. But right now, if you talk about Northwestern, if you're going to talk about Northwestern today, what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about all their injuries. Like they lost Ty Berry, then Langborg was out for several games, and then yesterday they lost their big guy, which he couldn't play yesterday at all, and they basically allowed them to lose that game because of injuries. And if you're Mike Woodson, you got to sit back and be like, hang on a minute, why are they making all these excuses for this team? Just lost this. I lost my starting point guard for the majority of the season, and that's probably the most important position on the court, and everybody wants to throw him out the window. And it's just that's where we're at in today's world. It's social media. We love it, and we have to live with the bad parts of it. And unfortunately, with the petition to have him removed and all of that stuff, like, that's just the bad parts you got to live with.
Absolutely. John is telling us we got to take a hard break.
That is the case.
We've got to do that, but we've got more coming up with the Todd Father here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at Hoosier Hanks East, where we will be on Sunday after Indiana's Senior Day festivities. And forgot about that. Senior Day festivities coming up on Sunday as they take on Michigan State. But more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with the Todd Father right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the mark.
What's hard break mean versus regular break?
Because of our first hour has
to stop right at a certain point.
And it's just so it times out easy for the Fort Wayne station.
Got it.
It's not hard in a sense that, like, it has to be in an exact time, but it's more just
kind of needs to be.
Needs to be within a couple of minutes, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. I get it.
Dang it. I'm trying to get that sent out. Boy, I bet that game was hard on you last night. Staying up that late.
Yeah, I know. Man, I'm getting old. It's crazy.
It was hard on me. I fell asleep.
Those 9 o'clock games are rough. I never see the end of one.
Last one.
Yeah, I know. I never see the end of one if it's not IU.
What time do they play Sunday? Is it afternoon on Sunday?
2:30. 2 or 2:30.
Not bad at all.
Nope.
Yeah, I didn't think about it until after you sent that first tweet, but I'm like, Wow, only 14 made baskets in the first
Yeah,
half?
I mean, when you only have 30 points, I mean, you're not going to have too many field goals. But yeah, it was that stat can be so deceiving because it's not necessarily a great stat. I'd rather them have 14 assists on 22 made field goals.
Absolutely.
I'm ready for the sun to come back out and it be 70 again.
Oh, man, this last few days have just sucked. But
I
it's
do.
early March. We always forget about that.
Sunday and Monday were great, though.
Can't wait.
Pretty good in March when I can hit some golf balls in the morning and watch IU play in the afternoon.
I actually swung a club the other day. Just hitting wedge,
Yeah.
short irons.
Yeah.
Apparently they got shorter in the last 6 months.
Maybe you
Because
grew. Maybe you're taller.
I must be, because I was like, what is going? I mean, 50, and I'm like, now I'm getting upset.
All right, here we go.
Well, just
guys.
upset.
To the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty. Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Thursday, joined by our good friend, the Todd father. Indiana coming off of their third straight win last night, on the second straight road win. That's something they have not done this season. I'm pretty confident in saying, right?
For sure. Yeah, they didn't win 2 games in a row since December. So yeah, and all those games in December were at home. So yeah, that definitely is the first time. But I mean, that's probably not happened by very many teams not named Purdue or Illinois in the conference. Maybe Wisconsin did early in the conference, but look lately, everybody has struggled to win on the road.
Yeah, Illinois had a shot to keep themselves in line for a share of the Big Ten tournament or Big Ten title, but they took care of business at home Purdue took care of business on the road against Illinois, a game that was in doubt up until the last minute. And man, Braden Smith, he sunk a dagger.
Yeah, I mean, that's look, that kid has done nothing but make that team better. And I just laugh when I see people. I'm a guard, so it offends me when I hear them say, you know, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna Bill Walton it again. But when I played with Montross in high school, my senior year, his junior year, we won the state. And coming back the next year, his senior year in high school, they did not win. And I will tell you, they had a guard that was better than me on Indiana's team, or on Lawrence North's team, and they just didn't win. They couldn't win. And that's a reflection, I think, of leadership and a lot of other things, intangibles other than playing. And I think that's one of the things Braden Smith brings to Purdue. I mean, that kid just not to throw anybody under the bus, but just compare that ball being in the hands of Gabe Cupps right now at the end of that game versus Braden Smith. And that shot never gets taken if it's Gabe Cupps. Not saying he wouldn't make it, but he would never take that shot. And that's Braden Smith's just cold. Like he's
has definitely grown and grown into his role, which we will see if that's good enough for Purdue once they get to tournament play this year, because they have a big bullseye on their back like any other elite team does. It just,
well, hey, Jim, look at this. Look at this is what's going to happen, and they need to be prepared for it right now. And I'll tell you, I'm an Indiana fan. I love Indiana. That's my loyalty for sure. But I enjoy watching good basketball, so I enjoy watching Purdue play. They are a fun version of basketball that I enjoy watching. Maybe some people would not, so I'm not trying to sell you on it. I just enjoy watching them play. But I will tell you this, and they need to be prepared for it right now. when they get into the NCAA tournament, some team is going to run. They're going to have some quick little guards, and they're going to run and trap and double team and go at Braden Smith and take the ball out of his hands. Right now, what I think every team in the Big Ten does wrong in playing Purdue is they focus so much on Edey, they let the ball stay in Braden Smith's hands, and they need to go take the ball out of his hands. If they go, he's a great player, and I love him. I've been a supporter of his since he was in early high school, and his dad will back me up in saying that. But I'll tell you this: to change the way Purdue has to play, if some team goes and takes the ball out of his hands, they've got a lot better chance of beating Purdue.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, there's no player that you need to focus on Purdue more
Totally.
so than Braden Smith. He's
Totally.
the engine that makes that train go. Zach Edey is a big car, no doubt. He's like 4 cars, train cars, but he's still he's not. I'll look back through the records, but I'm pretty sure he has not beaten anybody by scoring 60 points by himself. And that's not going to happen. If he doesn't get the ball, he can't score the ball.
They run a lot of good motion. They run a lot of misdirection where they look like they're running screens off for guys going somewhere. And really all they're doing, they're running a screen to get this guy the ball, not for a shot, so that he can pass it into Edey. And so there's a lot of fluff motion going on with them. But what teams allow them to do repeatedly is they let the ball sit in Braden Smith's hands while all that action is going on. And if somebody goes and takes that away from them, that's when they're going to have a lot of other guys make plays. And I'll say this. They've got a lot of guys that can make plays. Fletcher Lawyer's playing good now. He was playing not so great a month ago. Lance Jones not playing great now, but he was playing great a month ago. Always Mason Gillis is good every game. They've got other guys that can step up. But what I'm saying is some teams going to make those other guys step up. And that's what happened to them last year. They got overpressured and they had needed other guys to step up, and it just happened to be one of those games where let me just make it really this simple, Jim. Purdue just won on the road at Illinois. It was almost all you got what you expected out of Edey. You got what you expected out of Braden Smith. Fletcher Lawyer stepped up, and he was huge. He had 16 points in that game, made a bunch of big-time shots. If he doesn't make those shots, if he and Lance Jones both have an off day like Lance Jones had in that game, if they both have an off day, they don't win that game. And that's what's scary. That's what's scary about the NCAA tournament. I mean, when you put all your eggs on, this is going to be the year that we do it. I have always said from absolute day one, the NCAA tournament takes a ton of great play and good teams, and it also takes some luck. And if that luck doesn't, you can't predict luck. If that luck doesn't go your way, bad things happen and you get bounced by a 16 seed. And I'm not predicting that's going to happen, and I don't want it to happen.
As Brian points out, in the first half, Illinois, and they were focused on stopping Purdue's guards. And it was working because they were leading the game. And then in the second half, they kind of changed philosophies. And they let Braden Smith get just open some cracks. And he kicked the door in just with under 2 minutes to go. Purdue took over that game enough to win it.
It's very hard to just continue to allow a guy like Edey to just dominate you, but you almost have to pick your poison. You almost have to just say, let's try to beat him from 3. Let Edey, not let him, but let's make it as difficult as we possibly can. But let's let him score 30. Like, let's not double team him and let's let him score 30. Let them run the clock down, and then we got to outscore him from the 3-point line. That's really the only recipe I see for being able to beat Purdue, even against a team. UConn is very good. They've also got a big monster on the inside. He's nothing like Edey, not even close. But they got him in the NBA draft boards being drafted higher than Edey, which baffles me.
Well, I think it's because for Edey it will come down to his ability to defend players in the NBA that are going to rarely be on the block. They're going to be moving. I
agree with you, but the Klingon guy from UConn he's 7'1". I mean, he's 3 inches shorter. Not like he's 6'10". and he is no more mobile than Edey. So that's just what I'm saying. Like, they've got some metrics that I don't understand when they evaluate some of these NBA guys, because I don't understand how Edey wouldn't be above a guy like that. I'm not saying where he should get drafted. I don't know that. They're going to have to change. Teams going to have to change their philosophy in the NBA and be different, be on the forefront of changing the game in the NBA to get Edey involved.
Indiana now turns their focus to a Michigan State team who started out as being perceived as
fourth in the country
as a team that's going to challenge Purdue. That did not end up being the case. And they really haven't made this late season surge that we kind of maybe expected from them. They're better, but hell, Indiana's better than they were. So this is a game that Indiana can definitely win. But what is the keys? What are the keys going to be for Indiana to get this done?
Well, so when looking at it matchup wise, you know, the difference in this Michigan State team versus, I'll say, the average year Tom Izzo Michigan State teams is they really have no inside play, like none. Like sometimes they start different guys on their interior, whatever. Like they're basically using these guys for fouls. The Kohler kid comes in, the Cooper kid comes in. Like they're not – they might get a basket here and there, and when they do, everybody goes crazy because it seems so rare. Like I watched them play yesterday against Northwestern, and those guys were – when I say non-factors, like they were no part of the game whatsoever, and especially from a positive perspective. They made some mistakes, but that's about it. But they're so guard-heavy. Now, the reason why they were ranked so high, this is one of those rankings where I understand. I definitely can see why preseason-wise people ranked Michigan State where they did, because I think we will all agree, even though you've got guys like Edey, guards dominate when it comes to college basketball. Guards dominate really good teams. And this team has A.J. Hoggard, was it TJ Walker? Is that his name? That doesn't sound right. Yeah,
Walker. Tyson Walker.
Tyson Walker. They have Jaden Akins, and they have Malik Hall. Like they have a bunch of really good guards, like all veterans. Malik Hall's been there 4 or 5 years. Tyson Walker's been there 4 years in college, 4 years at least. AJ Hoggard's a very veteran guard. Like they got tons of guard heavy experience, and they honestly they should be better. I think Izzo would probably, but it's a different type team. I mean, this team is nothing like the Michigan States of old. Like they're not the pound the glass, out rebound you, out offensive rebound you, and beat you in that category by double digits every game. Like they're not that team. They don't even win the rebounding battle most nights. So Indiana's got to do, in answer to your question, they've got to do what I think Indiana is good at. This is the scary part of this game for me, is I love the fact that Indiana pushed the ball up and down the court yesterday. And really the last 2 ball games, we've commented on it. Like they're flying up and down the court. They're playing much faster than we did in the past. The weakness for Michigan State is their interior. The strength for Indiana is their interior. I hope we don't get too tunnel visioned into slowing the game down and pounding it inside the whole time. Now, yes, I think we need to dominate points in the paint. We need to continue to dominate that stat, but we need more of a game like yesterday. I hope Malik Renew starts to get more comfortable playing at a faster pace, and if he does, we're a pretty good team.
Yeah, Indiana, 2/3 of their points last night came in the paint. Roughly 30% came on fast break points, though. That Indiana, and we've talked about them not pushing that enough, and they have to do that against decent teams or better, especially a team like Michigan State. They're definitely going to have to do that. Keep them on their heels. Don't let the defense get set. Use various options, whether it's Mackenzie Mbako hitting, sometimes shooting in transition. That's something we didn't see a lot of him doing early on, or Indiana doing, period, early on. A little more comfortability in that right now for them in that, and that's something that they missed. And I think that cost them games, not having that ability early on.
ability, and I'll even say it wasn't part of the game plan. Like Indiana was much more adept to walking it down the court and being very methodical in their offense and trying to make sure they pounded the ball in the post. And even though that is still the priority, as it should be, they're playing with more pace and they're taking earlier shots, and they're like we've had 2 games in a row where Khalil Ware got wide open layups because he never made it back down the floor because the team went down the floor so fast and scored, and we were able to just chuck it down to the other end for an easy layup. And like that's the pace this team is better at. Like I hate to say, I know that we have the big guys inside, but let's teach them to play faster and not teach everybody else to play slower. And I think we're a better team in that regard.
How important is it for Indiana to win this game against Michigan State? It's at home. You're riding a 3-game winning streak right now, heading into the Big Ten tournament. With where they have been mentally, where the team has been mentally all year, I think this is just a critical game for them. Not for this season as much for next year, even though we don't even know what the roster will be like. Going in with a load of positivity has just you got to have that.
Yeah, no, it's gigantic in one because Jim, we're crazy like most of our fan base is, which is awesome, and that I haven't given up yet on this year. Like there's a chance. So you're saying there's a chance? Yeah, there's a chance. Like I could see a scenario of us making that run. I could also see a scenario of us laying an egg, which that's the part of it that's not the old IU basketball fan that used to think that was never an option. But this team, from a momentum perspective, I'll just give you the obvious answer. Going into the Big Ten tournament, which they need to make a run in, if not completely win the whole thing, they've got a lot of momentum right now. They feel good about themselves. Riding a high right now that we just wish this had been back in January, but let's take for what we can control, and you got to come in and control this game from the beginning. Michigan State needs a win also. Michigan State lays 2 eggs and loses this game and then loses the first game of the Big Ten tournament. Don't know that they're in the tournament. If they do, it's the Tom Izzo factor, because they've not played well enough in the tournament. Their wins are not good enough so far to be in the tournament. Now, they could change all that, and they could make their record such that, they are in no matter what by winning a couple games. But, yeah, you're going to have 2 teams fighting and scratching for a game that they need to win.
Jason asked, did IU's net come down any after handing Minnesota that loss on the road? Yeah, a little bit. It came. They're 95th in the net now, which is better than being above the 100 line. If they beat Michigan State, it'll probably come down another 4 or 5 spots to 90. But even like I said, they win 2 games in the Big Ten tournament. It's not going to be against very good teams. It's still the best I can see them doing is getting down to 80, and it's just not going to cut it. But it's great momentum. Gosh, I hate saying the acronym NIT, but Terry Morin built her women's program off of an NIT championship back in the late 2000s. Any positivity, if you can win 6-7 games in a row, that is just a program boost, not only for recruiting, not only for the guys that will remain on the team, and for the fan base.
Yeah, I mean,
I know that all that just I can already tell.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a very limited answer to this because the NIT is it's a scenario that if they offer it to this team, they probably have to take it. Like you probably have to go play in it. But I mean, I'm not gonna even follow like where we are at that point. Like I don't care whether we win or lose. First of all, let's just this is probably factual, and it's really my opinion, but it's probably factual. Khalil Ware, whether he goes to the NBA or doesn't go to the NBA, he's going to test the waters, Mbako, gonna test the waters. Won't surprise me if Renew tests the waters. Just see what response they get back from NVA people. So all that being the case, those guys wouldn't play in an NIT game, and I don't need to watch that.
I hear you.
I don't want it to happen. Let's just win the whole thing.
Congratulations to Trey Galloway, Khalil Ware. They had a great night last night. Galloway now one of 4 Hoosiers, listen to this stat, to have at least 3 games with 11 assists or more in a career, joining Isaiah Thomas, Jamal Meeks, and Michael Lewis. Tied for second on the IU single-season Big Ten assist record with 105, trailing Quinn Buckner's 106. So he'll have a chance to beat that record against Michigan State. That is not something that I would have ever expected out of Trey Galloway from this season because it wasn't his role.
Right. Yeah, no. I think Indiana learned throughout the season of what was working, and they've rolled with it. I mean, think about that. Go back and look at the stats from early in the season, and this was not the stat sheet. Like, Trey Galloway didn't have the ball in his hands like they're running right now. Plus, Indiana wasn't scoring very many points. That's one of those weird things about that stat. Like, imagine Indiana being up there in the net because they scored tons of points early in the season in those pre-conference games. Trey Galloway would have a lot more assists. Like, some of these records would be smashed, but they're not. And Indiana is where they're at. And yeah, Trey Galloway has done what's been asked of him, which I think is the case. You could have asked him to play in the post, and he would have done that as well. And
it's a little amazing that they are where they are because in addition to that, over Mackenzie Mbako's last 6 games, he's averaging 17 points, shooting 47% from the floor, 43% from behind the arc, and has registered 15-point games in 4 of his last 6. So it's coming around for him a little late, but there it is. Indiana taking on Michigan State this Sunday in Senior Day festivities. I'm sure those are great memories for you.
Yeah, it was fun. I'll tell you this, like it is definitely something that weighs on your mind. I know Coach had the thing where we talk to the crowd and all that. And in today's world, like, look at me now. You can't shut me up. Like, I could stand out there and talk forever. But as a 22-year-old kid, like, I dreaded it like you wouldn't believe. Like, I know I talked for a long time, but I wasn't comfortable. Like, it was.
Who would be?
It was an uncomfortable scenario.
Todd Leary, the Todd father. Make sure you join us for After the Game with Todd Leary coming up. And also don't forget, if you have or know of anyone with kids, or maybe it's yourself playing in a league, who knows, that needs help with that jump shot, just go to myjumpshot.com, the shot doctor. What I ought to call him. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Love it. See you Sunday.
Up next, Chris Denari from the Indiana Pacers joins us. We'll talk about the Indy team and see how they are as they continue to get closer to the playoff play as well. Back with more, brought to you by myjumpshot.com right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly.
Good morning, Chris.
Hey there, John.
Hello.
Hey, Jim.
How are you, sir?
I used to play pickup with Leary all the time when he was young.
I hope you whipped his butt.
Where is he living?
He lives here, right? He lives in Bloomington.
He does live in Bloomington?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I used to live not far. When he and Montross were in high school, I used to play pickup with them.
Gee whiz, I hope you were playing a perimeter play, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I did not realize that he just said this a minute ago, and I didn't bring it up, but I did not realize that they were not in the same class.
Oh, he and Montross?
Yeah, Larry Montross was a year younger than him, apparently.
Yeah. I used to, when we first got married, we lived by Lawrence North. Think back who they had then. They had Leary, Montross, Derwin Webb, who played at Louisville.
That's another thing I didn't know. Am I going, Derwin Webb? He's an attorney down in Louisville now, but I was playing in Louisville.
Great guy. I haven't seen Derwin forever, but he was a great guy.
Crazy for feeling so lonely.
Yeah, I mean,
they love it when I sing, Chris.
What?
They love it when I sing.
Yeah. I'm not going to sing because I'm bad.
Well, I'm not bad. I'm terrible. Terrible.
So IU has Michigan State.
That's it. Then it's tournament time.
They're what?
Then it's tournament time.
Yeah, yep.
All right, here we go, guys. 30 seconds.
And selection of Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Thursday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends from Reynolds Family Dentistry down in Sellersburg. For all of you living down in the southern Indiana, go see our friend Dr. J. He'll give you that championship smile. Speaking of championship smiles, Chris Denari from the Indiana Pacers. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's a game day. Pacers have Minnesota tonight at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It's one of the rare home games this month. The Pacers play 10 of 15 on the road. Just got back from a 3-game road trip. First 2 games did not go well, but the third game went very well. Another win against Dallas. Played really well on Tuesday, made 18 threes. Tyrese Halliburton sort of got his mojo back, so that was good to see. So home game tonight, then back on the road Sunday in Orlando and Tuesday at Oklahoma City. So of the next 3 games, you've got the 2 best teams in the West, Minnesota and Oklahoma City right now. 2 very young teams are tied for the best record in the Western Conference. So we have not seen OKC yet. Ironically, we'll play Oklahoma City twice, I think, in the last 16 games. And the other team, Jim, we haven't seen is Brooklyn. The Pacers will play the Nets 3 times in like the last 16 games. So just sort of quirky how the schedule has worked out that way.
Imagine that. I know here of late, the Pacers have not quite had that same magic they had, but that had been largely because Tyrese Halliburton had just been off, I guess you'd say. I don't know if you call it a slump. It was just, he just hadn't recaptured the post All-Star game magic yet, but he comes out of that and he hit, I know there was a single shot, a 3 that seemed to reinvigorate him, but where is he right now in getting back to how he was playing?
Yeah, I think he was, he was much better. Tuesday night, he had 19.6 rebounds, 11 assists, 8 of 15 from the field, only 3 of 10 from 3. But his previous 4, and this is unlike Tyrese, he averaged 9.5 points, 8 assists, 27% from the field, and he was 4 of 26 from 3. Now, everybody at some point goes through a slump. I mean, it happens throughout the year. He really had not had anything like this, as a member of the Pacers. But, I think so much was asked of him over the All-Star break. He was the host representing the franchise, the city, the league. That at some point it's going to take its toll and you're going to run out of gas. And I also think as you get into the year, teams have more tape. They understand that he's the guy that fuels the engine. He sees a lot of double teams. He sees a lot of bigger players on him. They'll take a 6'8", 6'9" wing and put more size on him. So there's a lot of adaptation that the Pacers have had to do. And it's also up to his teammates to step forward. And so I thought they did a really nice job on Tuesday against a good Dallas team. I mean, Dallas has Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, two of the best players in the NBA. So it was a good step, but they'll be challenged tonight. Again, a very good Minnesota team. Now, they've got one of their stars and all-stars out. Karl Anthony Towns is out with a sore knee. So that helps a little bit, but it'll be a good measuring stick tonight again for the Pacers. Again, they're locked in. They're 8th right now in the East, which puts them in the play-in, but they're only a game and a half or 2 games out of 4th. So that's what you're seeing in the final 20 games, and I think that's why the NBA, Jim, went to this play-in tournament. It creates more drama down the final 5 weeks of the season because you have teams trying to get into the top 6 so that they guarantee themselves a playoff spot, and trying to stay out of 7 through 10, which is in that play-in tournament. So I think it's been a good move by the NBA the last number of years. But right now the Pacers are in that mode. They're trying to get into the top 6, and they're only a game and a half or so out.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting to see how far they can move up, because obviously that affects your opposition on who you play in the tournament, and then that turns into matchups on who has a better matchup. And sometimes you wind up in a better position. Indiana, for example, they're unbelievably climbing up the Big Ten standings, which will matter for them in the Big Ten tournament, and keep them avoid having to play either Illinois or Purdue, which it's the same for the Pacers. You don't want to have to play the Celtics right off the bat.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That if you're in that play-in tournament and you're either going to finish 7th or 8th, if you finish 8th, you're going to play the Celtics because they've got a big margin over Cleveland in number 2. What's interesting about the play-in tournament, and again, it becomes like an NCAA tournament. It's winning you're in, losing you're out. Is in the West, you've got the Lakers and Golden State in 9 and 10. They're going to play a game. If that holds, those 2 teams are going to play a game in April, and one of those teams is not going to make the playoffs. So it's a winning you're in, losing you're done. That's going to be fascinating television to see. Is it going to be Steph Curry and his group? Again, we have a long way to go. We don't know where they'll finish. But if the season ended right now, you've got some really interesting play-in tournament games that will be that first week of the playoffs.
And you also have the irony of the Indiana Hoosiers playing Minnesota last night, and today, or this evening, the Pacers taking on Minnesota.
No question about that. It was good to see Indiana get a win. And just as you said, I mean, that's these postseason tournaments are so important in college basketball. Also the matchups. And now that there are so many teams in the Big Ten, you want to move up the ladder because it's less games that you play, right? You've got a number of those teams that have the double bye. You just want to get a bye so you don't have to play in that first day up in Minnesota.
Yeah, if you don't, if you're in the bottom 4, you fly in a day. So you have to get there Tuesday. You play on Wednesday. You play on Thursday. The other teams at the other end, they don't even play first until Friday.
Right.
Get to relax. Get to sleep in your own bed. A lot to be said for that kind of stuff. You know better than most.
Yeah, there's no question of just following that over the years and all my years of doing college basketball with Butler. I mean, seeding is important because it's not just who you play, it's when you play. And you want to have as much advantage as you can, especially from a rest standpoint over the team that you're playing to put you in a better situation to get ready for postseason.
Absolutely. What does Indiana need to do? Obviously win. I mean, that's a simple answer, but to really find this next level that they need to find, this is the time of year where, all right, it's time to step up, elevate the game. Hopefully Tyrese Halliburton gets back quickly to the player he was prior to the All-Star game.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, focus. It's coach speak, but a game at a time. You've got a heavy road schedule, so that part is not favorable, especially here in March. But you've got some critical games coming up. You've got a game in April against Miami. Excuse me. That's going to be huge because right now Miami's in 6th, and they're only a game ahead of the Pacers, and that season series is tied at a game apiece. So that's going to be a tiebreaker game. Whoever wins that game will have the tiebreaker on the other team. The good news is, Jim, for those teams that are ahead of the Pacers, New York in 5th, who is a game and a half ahead of Indiana, and Philadelphia now in 7th. They played a long time without Joel Embiid. They're just a half game ahead of the Pacers. Indiana has the tiebreaker against both the Knicks and the 76ers. So if there's a tie, then Indiana's going to get the advantage. The only team the Pacers don't have a tiebreaker with is the team right now in 4th is Orlando, and they've made a huge jump. This tells you how clumped up everything is, Jim. Orlando just a few days ago was 8th in the Eastern Conference. They're 4th as we speak. By Monday, they could be 8th again. So it's just very important, one, as you said, to win games, but also a key game is going to be Miami down the stretch. And the 2 teams to look at where you own the tiebreaker is Philadelphia and New York. So you want to win games. You also want to get help from your opponents in having Philadelphia and New York continue to tumble in the Eastern Conference standings.
Yeah, again, I hate to use Indiana as an example, but they need a little help from Rutgers in beating Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Because ironically, Indiana can go from a week ago, we're talking about them staying out of the bottom 4, of which we just talked about, having to play on the first day. Now they could be as high as a 5 seed with a win over Michigan State and a loss by Wisconsin to Rutgers. Well, including that they lose to Purdue, which that's an assumption on my part. But
I think that's the thing is you sort of you hate to have to rely on other people, but that literally usually is life in sports. Is you control what you can control, and you hope you have some help from other teams that take care of business against teams that you're competing with. In Indiana, in the Indiana Hoosier standpoint, as you said, getting some help from other teams. For the Pacers, it's also looking at the schedule, getting some help from other teams as well.
Absolutely. So now Indiana has to pick it up and take on the Timberwolves tonight at 7:00 before they head out onto the road to take on the Magic, and the Thunder coming back to take on the Bulls, and then the Nets. You said first. How do you get this late in the season and not having played a team?
That's crazy. I mean, you're right. There are 2 teams I mentioned that the Pacers have not played, and they have 19 games left, and that's 2 games with Oklahoma City and 3 games with Brooklyn. It's just an oddity. Sometimes you play early in the season, and in your first 12 or 13 games, you might play a team 2 or 3 times. I'm sure it's all about arena availability and scheduling and all those kinds of things, but it is pretty crazy that the Pacers have yet to play the Brooklyn Nets, who are an Eastern Conference team. And an Eastern Conference team, the minimum you play a team is 3 games, and that's what they'll have in the final 6 weeks of the year.
Chris Denari from the Indiana Pacers, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate you, brother.
We'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. Chris Denari from the Indiana Pacers. Make sure you follow him on the Bally Network on the calls for those games. More coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with it all right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Remember to, since this is the last segment, to kind of time it well with Zach, because you know how the answers can be sometimes.
Oh, shit. I forgot he was coming on.
My point being, like, don't ask another question with like 3 minutes left, because then we'll go like 6 minutes over.
You mean like with 5 minutes left?
All right. He says he'll be on in a second.
No worries.
And tomorrow, Sharon Wilkerson and them at 9:50.
Oh, yeah. How about that?
And I got to move Casey Bartley to 9:10. Excuse me. So we're loaded again tomorrow.
Good things.
Mm-hmm. All right, 30 seconds.
The table is located on South Walnut in Bloomington and is your one-stop shop for high-quality meats, bakery items, and now fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. Appreciate you being with us. Indiana coming off of another road win last night. They're third in a row, by the way. There was a tweet just put out by Mason Williams retweeted from Mason Williams of thehoosier.com that said, I used win last night, metrically stacks up as its most impressive thus far. So that's, even though Indiana is arguably playing their best basketball of the season, could end up as high as a 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Realistically, they have no shot at the NCAA tournament other than winning the Big Ten tournament. Why is that? Metrics, man. They just did not do enough when they needed to. And it's just been too little too late, although they're playing extraordinarily well right now, and no reason to think that won't continue. Several players obviously playing well. Mackenzie Mbako, as I just said, 17 points per game, shooting out of his mind the last 6 contests. Kel'el Ware becoming more consistent. He had a little bit he didn't score in the first half of the previous win, but came back with a strong second half, but was involved the entire time. Whether he was affecting the opposition's offense or grabbing rebounds. I was still a part of that. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star joins us now, and several things to talk about, Zach. First, obviously, Indiana with another win last night on the road, which always huge in this league or any league for that matter. And they're probably arguably playing their best basketball of the season. Many of the players, Mackenzie Mbako, I've been talking about, he's averaging 17 points a game over the last 6 games. His 3-point shooting is off the charts. His shooting is off the charts. Kel'el Ware has been pretty consistent other than the first half of the previous game, but still impacted the game with rebounds, with defense. Trey Galloway has become unconscious as a facilitator, which was never at all expected from him. But yet here he is. 1 assist from tying a Quinn Buckner record, which a little mind-boggling in itself. So they have a lot of good, positive things going on right now, Zach. Not enough for NCAA consideration other than winning the Big Ten tournament, but there's a lot of positives there for them to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to write a little bit about this, among other things, in my newsletter today. I do think, in all likelihood, the only viable path to the tournament probably remains winning the Big Ten tournament for Indiana. I mean, there is maybe a very, very sort of narrow set of results that could see them play to the Big Ten tournament championship game, lose that, and get in. But I'm skeptical even of that.
That would probably take a lot of help outside of the Big Ten,
and they would need to play like all of the right teams, if you understand. Like they need it to set up so that, for example, they played like, probably based on like the numbers, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Purdue all, and they would need to beat Purdue. Like they would need to be in a situation where they beat Purdue, they beat Illinois, and then they lost to someone, very sort of like losable to, for lack of a better term, like a Wisconsin. Anyway, set that to one side. I do think, and I don't, listen, it's kind of one of those things where it's probably too little too late. And I don't think that every criticism of Mike Woodson, his job performance this year, the direction of the program at this exact moment in time is unfair. I do think if you're going to hit Woodson for some of that, then you also have to hear him out on some stuff, not least, kind of his claim, I think justifiably, that this is what it always looked like in his mind's eye. This is what it was, generally speaking, supposed to look like in terms of, Trey Galloway and Xavier Johnson as these kind of like savvy veteran backcourt running mates. Guys like Anthony Walker, CJ Gunn, Gabe Cupps giving Indiana minutes off the bench, Mackenzie Mbako knocking down a bunch of shots, being really this team's kind of primary sort of shot maker in the half court, and then Kel'el Ware and Malik Renew just kind of owning the paint and doing that in a way that was maybe a little bit more flexible and dynamic than what we saw from Trace Jackson Davis, at least offensively last year. And, I don't know where the ceiling on this team would have been if this was the Indiana we saw by, let's say, the Auburn game in December. I don't think we'd be talking about a Big Ten champion or anything, but we probably would be talking about an NCAA tournament team. And, it's kind of one of those where between injuries, inconsistency, and experience, Indiana's probably just kind of found the formula a little bit too late. And that doesn't absolve anyone. Ultimately, I think even if you were sitting here, Mike Woodson would say, listen, it's my job as the coach to get it figured out sooner than this. And Indiana didn't, and that's where you wind up. But it does kind of, push back against something that I think a lot of us have talked about in different ways, that there has been, sort of this narrative that this season has been kind of an unmitigated disaster. And I don't think that's really the case. And, I have covered unmitigated disasters on this beat before. This is just a disappointing season. And if Indiana does find its way to beating Michigan State on Sunday, and, we can have a discussion about, whether that's likely or whatever, They're going to finish in the top half of the conference. Now, that doesn't mean that this season has been fine and nothing's wrong. That doesn't mean that that's just an sort of an expected outcome Indiana fans should be happy with. Indiana should absolutely aspire to more. But if they win Sunday, they're going to finish 10-10. They're going to finish, if I'm doing my math right, at worst 7th in the league, and
as high as 5th, possibly.
And we're all going to look around and sort of say, hey, when you consider what Indiana lost off last season, when you consider the injuries, when you consider how young this team was, this was maybe something we always should have expected as a possibility for this team. And, that doesn't mean it's not a disappointment. It just means it's not necessarily a disaster.
The only thing I push back on is when any time that someone talks about what they lost, and there's no arguing that point. I mean, when you see two guys that are playing in the league, it's also what they did not gain to replace what they lost. So there's equality there, but it's not as always easy as that. I understand. So I'm not going to nitpick on that too hard. But at the same time, a big crack on Mike Woodson has been he's got his philosophy on coaching, which of course you would, but his philosophy on coaching the college game is the same as is different than most others have done. He repeated that recently, that it runs inside out, and that has not worked all that well. Having an All-American was great, but when you don't have that, although Khalil Ware is certainly making a case for himself better, he's getting better each game as well. But I just don't know that there's enough adjustment in him, his flexibility on attacking the game as from a philosophical standpoint. And I think that's been a big hindrance.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is where I don't think it is I don't think it is unfair to kind of, I don't think every criticism or complaint of this season is unfair by any means. And I think in particular, this is one of those where, Woodson himself probably needs to learn some lessons from this season. And that doesn't mean that Indiana needs to, just be absolute small ball, 4 out, 4 guards, whatever. Like, they'll have Liam McNeely come in next season. Obviously, we can sit here and talk for hours, speculate on who might go into the portal or who they could get out of the portal or whatever. But let's just imagine for a moment a world, as an example, where that they don't really go find another like big 5. They slide Malik Renew to the 5, Mackenzie Mbako to the 4, and Liam McNeely slots in at the 3. I mean, that front court's got some weakness. It's not very big. I think it would have some trouble rebounding the ball against bigger teams. You would lose the rim protection that has been a staple of Woodson's defenses, since he got to Indiana, between Trace Jackson Davis and Khalil Ware. On the other hand, that is a much more offense-minded front court. We've seen Mackenzie Mbako's shot come around. Liam McNeely obviously has a reputation as a frankly elite shot maker at the prep level. We've even seen Malik Renew able to get his offense away from the rim. So suddenly that's all of that scenario requires is 2 guys that are already on the team to stay on the team and a guy who's signed to show up and be roughly what we think Indiana signed when they got him in Liam McNeely. And you have a very different looking offensive dynamic, defensive dynamic too. And I don't think that's a perfect team by any means. But my point is, you're never that far away in basketball, because ultimately all it takes is 1 or 2 key additions and boom, you think about, for example, where Tennessee was before Dalton connects. They would have had a good team this season. Santiago Vescovi, Zakai Ziegler's back, but they added a genuine player of the year candidate. One that Indiana, it should be said, tried to add as well. out of the portal. And, suddenly they're one of the best teams in the country again, despite what they lost last year between, guys who left, guys who graduated, guys who went in the portal themselves. So my point is you're never that far away. I'm not trying to paint this as just sort of like everything's going to be fine. There's nothing to worry about. Everybody just relax. I recognize there's a lot of work to do. I don't know that it's an impossible amount of work though. And I think that it's kind of been, it's kind of been sort of perceived that way. I think, if you have mass exodus via the portal, which is always a possibility in this era, yeah, that's a problem. But if you don't, if some of that's overstated, if, a couple guys, like if McKenzie and Baco, as an example, looks at, kind of the body of work from this season and says, you know what, this staff made me better. And I'm not quite ready for the NBA yet, but probably maybe after one more year, I will be. I'll come back. I'll get even more shots. I'll prove I'm an elite shot maker. And then I'll go after my sophomore year. Well, that's a big building block. I mean, that's a really substantial piece to kind of put into the puzzle right away. And I'm rambling at this point, but you kind of understand my point. And I'll add this too. I wasn't in Minneapolis last night. Mike Neislick and I split these trips up, and yesterday was my son's 6th birthday, so I stayed home.
Oh, happy birthday!
And I was obviously just kind of digging around, making some calls, trying to get a feel for some things once it was, kind of confirmed Woodson is coming back next year.
Oh, yes. And Zach wrote that where I meant to say that earlier.
And one thing I was able to confirm is I do think there's an even greater level of NIL commitment around the program this cycle than there has been the last couple. And my understanding for a while has been Indiana's got one of the best NIL setups in the Big Ten, if not the country.
Me too.
That's not surprising, obviously. And that's around men's basketball in particular. Some of, I think, the improvement in NIL is just the nature of fundraising. You're going to get a little bit better at it. You're going to add more commitments. You're going to, onboard more partners and whatever else. Some of it, per my understanding, and I think this is just worth saying, and I wrote this last night, is that there is a high dollar donor class, particularly in Indiana's kind of NIL circles, that is still very much in Mike Woodson's corner. And I think, for lack of a more artful term, because this is a really rudimentary way to say it, I think is going to be willing to kind of put its money where its mouth is in terms of saying, we think Mike Woodson should get a chance to kind of, renew this again, revive this again, and we're going to try and give him more of the resources to do that.
Absolutely. And it looks like he will get that, like I said, you broke that story yesterday, that he is to put to bed any question on whether or not he will be returning. What is up next for you? Obviously, Indiana has senior day on Sunday. You just alluded to some things that you may be popping up.
You what? Sorry, you broke up there for a second.
I said, what's up next for you? Obviously, Indiana has senior day on Sunday, but you just alluded to some things that you may have coming out next.
Yeah. No, I mean, my newsletter is kind of the big one, just walking through some of it. It's going to lead with a bit of inside baseball, trying to put to rest these. And I, Lord knows, I don't always address this stuff, but I felt compelled to these sorts of, rumors that I published the story about his buyout because someone leaked it to me for some sort of political reason to push some kind of agenda.
I missed that. I mean, I saw the buyout part, but I didn't see the other part.
I don't normally get into this stuff, but it just, this all kind of took on a life of its own. And my suspicion, no one said this to me, but my suspicion is Indiana did kind of circulate that news last night just because it kind of felt like things were getting a little too out of hand in terms of
exactly. I was going to, yes, because that is not something they normally would have addressed, is it?
No, certainly not until maybe the end of the season. But I think just everybody sort of want to say like, hey, everybody take a breath and just understand that this is the direction all this is going. Also going to examine Indiana's kind of NCAA tournament chances. I mean, they are very slim, but just to kind of give people maybe a little bit more of an in-depth idea about where that's at. And then I think probably take a look at something that should be discussed, which is Mackenzie Mbako's Big Ten Freshman of the Year candidacy. I think that
absolutely
it's not the most important thing in the world necessarily, but 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we would have said he kind of wasn't in that conversation, and he was picked as preseason Freshman of the Year. That tends to just kind of be bestowed upon the highest ranked player coming into the conference, particularly when it's a player going into a situation where you can imagine they're going to get a lot of minutes and a lot of shots. Like that wasn't the case, for example, when Christian Lander went to Indiana, but it's because we looked at it, and even before maybe we didn't know kind of what Christian Lander might develop into, we looked at it and said, Michigan's going to give Hunter Dickinson a ton of shots. Indiana's probably going to confine Christian Lander's role a little bit. It makes a lot more sense to kind of talk about, see Hunter Dickinson as Freshman of the Year just on opportunity as much as anything else. But anyway, it's, Mbako has, I think, very much closed the gap to Cam Christie and Owen Freeman. And, that if you look at the three of them, none of those three teams is by any means a lock for the NCAA tournament. Each of those three, well, I said Freshman of the Year. Not newcomer of the year. Yeah, the AP asks for newcomer of the year. Baldwin's up there. Marcus Damask is up there for me. Kalel Ware, frankly, is in that conversation at least. AJ Storr. But for freshman of the year, each of those guys has had their ups and downs. I think Freeman's won freshman of the week most often. But I would argue Mbako is maybe nosed ahead here at the very end of the season. So just going to look at that as well. And then, it's senior day Sunday, and then get ready for Minneapolis next week.
Zach Osterman from the Indy Star. Make sure you're giving him a follow, sir. We will see you this weekend.
Thanks for having me as always.
You betcha. Thank you. And a big thanks to each and every one of you. Without you, we have no reason to be here, and we're so grateful for that. Shannon, Griffith, Todd, Leary, Chris Denari, and of course, Zach Osterman. John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. And we're back tomorrow to do this all again to get you set up for the weekend. Thank you so much. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana